Fatigue is a common symptom, yet a complex and multifaceted phenomenon. Today I am going to report a case on fatigue from a common symptom to a rare etiology. A 30 years female presented to us with fatigue. It had progressed over 3 months. She did not have any history of menstrual irregularity and no complaints of overt GI blood loss. Her sleep was normal and her weight was stable. There was no history suggestive of cold intolerance, polyuria or polydipsia, and she denied any symptoms of depression. No history of chronic drug use or toxin exposure, and there was no history suggestive of viral illness. There were no other systemic complaints. On general survey, PELA was present and other findings were non-contributory. Systemic examination was unremarkable. This table depicts the blood and immunological parameters in our patient. On evaluation, it was found that patient had anemia with hemoglobin of 10.2, WBC and platelet count were normal, peripheral blood smear showed normocytic normochromic anemia, and iron profile was suggestive of anemia of chronic disease. DCT was positive with elevated LDH. Her renal function was normal, and liver function showed transaminitis with elevated IgG level. Coagulation profile was normal, IgG was elevated. The complements were normal, and ANA-IFA showed 3 plus co-speckled. ANA profile was eventually done, which showed SSA 63 plus, Rho 52 2 plus, and SSP 1 plus. ELISA for Rho La was 213 and 40 units respectively. Autoimmune hepatitis profile was negative. Urine array showed albumin of 3 plus, 4 to 5 RBCs, and occult blood positive. 24 hours urine protein showed proteinuria of 1.5 gram. So presentation as fatigue. Is it a clue to diagnose connective tissue disease? In our patient, the initial indicators of an autoimmune etiology in a patient with fatigue was anemia with DCT positivity and raised LDH, transaminitis with elevated ALP, raised serum globulin and IgG levels, and ANA-IFA positive with 3 plus co-speckled. On further probing, it was found that patient had ocular sicca symptoms. This led us to evaluate further, and a Schirmer's test performed was positive, and ELISA anti-SSA SSB showed a titer of 213 and 40 respectively. So Sjogren's syndrome was diagnosed based on ocular sicca symptoms, positive anti-SSA and anti-SSB, positive Schirmer's test, and a histopathological finding of labial salivary gland biopsy, which showed a focus score of 1. This is the ACR-EULAR classification criteria for primary Sjogren's syndrome. The parameters include biopsy of the labial salivary gland with a focus score of more than equal to 1, anti-SSA, anti-Rho positive, ocular staining score of more than equal to 5 in at least one eye, Schirmer's test of less than 5 mm in at least one eye, and unstimulated whole saliva flow rate of less than equal to 0.1 milliliter per minute. A patient must have a total score of greater than equal to 4 to meet classification criteria. In our patient, the total score was 7, and so she fulfilled the criteria for primary Sjogren's syndrome. Other issues which yet remain unexplained was an urine examination showing active urinary sediments with a proteinuria of 1.5 gram and transaminitis with elevated ALP. So, renal biopsy as indicated was performed, and the light microscopy showed mesangial hypercellularity in all viable glomeruli. One of them was globally sclerotic and one had segmental sclerosis. Immunofluorescence studies showed mesangial deposits of IgA. The finding was suggestive of IgA nephropathy according to the Oxford classification score. This picture illustrates the findings of IgA nephropathy in a patient. The yellow arrow depicts segmental sclerosis of the capillary tuft, and mesangial hypercellularity is highlighted by the blue arrow. Autoimmune hepatitis profile done in a patient was negative, and in view of transaminitis with elevated ALP, a liver biopsy was recommended, but the patient refused. According to revised original scoring system of International Autoimmune Hepatitis Group, her score prior to corticosteroid therapy was 15. It fulfilled the criteria for probable autoimmune hepatitis. So the total score 15 was as follows. A patient was female, and for that she got a positive score of 2, ALP-AST elevated, positive ANA, negative viral markers, and no history of utilization of any hepatotoxic drugs or consumption of alcohol, carried a score of 3, and because of the associated autoimmune disease in the form of Sjogren's syndrome carried a score of 2. This is the revised original scoring system of International Autoimmune Hepatitis Group. The positive score was given if the patient was a female, elevated ALP-AST ratio, elevated serum globulin or IgG level above 1 times the upper limit of normal, positive ANA, anti-smooth muscle antibody or anti-LKM1 titers, positive anti-mitochondrial antibody, absence of viral markers, as well as absence of use of any hepatotoxic drug and absence of consumption of alcohol use, carried a positive point. Liver biopsy showing findings suggestive of autoimmune hepatitis carried a positive score. Presence of associated autoimmune disease carried a positive score, and associated HLA of DR3 or DR4 carried a positive score. Pre-treatment score more than 15 was being diagnosed as definitive autoimmune hepatitis and a score of 10 to 15 as probable autoimmune hepatitis. In our patient, the score was 15 and so she was a probable case of autoimmune hepatitis. She was treated with prednisolone 0.5 mg per day in view of IgA nephropathy with proteinuria 1.5 gram. And because of the possibility of autoimmune hepatitis, she also received tablet hydroxychloroquine and ramipril and local symptomatic therapy for ocular dryness. After 2 weeks of prednisolone, her liver enzymes began to decline. Azathioprine 25 mg was initiated at a low dose, and it is planned to increase her dose eventually. There's improvement in her symptoms with the current therapy. This table depicts the parameters at admission and after 2 weeks of corticosteroid therapy. Here we can see that ALP, AST and ALT levels at admission and after 2 weeks of corticosteroid therapy, which has declined. Overt renal involvement in primary Sjogren's syndrome occurs in less than 10% of the cases. The most common finding in renal biopsy is interstitial nephritis. Glomerulonephritis is relatively rare and it is a late sequelae. The association of IgA nephropathy in primary Sjogren's has been rarely reported in literature. The suggested pathogenesis of IgA nephropathy in primary Sjogren's is polyclonal hypergammaglobulinemia and deposition of IgA containing circulating immune complexes. Sjogren's syndrome itself is usually associated with positive ANA and hypergammaglobulinemia, which are also the parameters for the diagnosis of autoimmune hepatitis. Though a liver biopsy was not performed, but the diagnostic score of 15 before treatment increases the likelihood of autoimmune hepatitis. Moreover, following treatment with corticosteroid, there was dramatic reduction of the liver enzymes in our patient. This case is interesting because the initial complaint was only persistent fatigue, and later the patient was diagnosed as primary Sjogren's syndrome with concurrent IgA nephropathy and possible autoimmune hepatitis. Thus, we need to be highly suspicious and take proper history in any patient presenting to us with persistent fatigue. Further studies are warranted for understanding the pathogenesis of extraglandular involvement in Sjogren's syndrome. These are the references. Those interested can read the related case report or case series highlighted in bold.